everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. In today's 5 on Friday, I'm here to share with you my top 5 favorite books of 2024 that were part of a series. So this was particularly tricky to narrow down because I read a lot of really good books that were parts of series in 2024. And so I had so many books I could choose from. And one of the things I do not do is choose multiple books from the same series. So there were definitely a couple series that had multiple books that I gave 5 stars to and loved. And then I had to decide which one to use. And I definitely went with the first one if there was more than one, just because that was what made me fall in love with the series in the first place. So let's dive in. And speaking of that, I went with Roll Call, which is the first book in the Dungeon Club series. This is a graphic novel that follows Jess and Olivia. And they're really into D&D. They do a solo campaign where Jess plays a character and Olivia is the dungeon master, and Olivia would like to open it up to more people. She is really good at making friends, likes to get to know new people, whereas Jess is really happy it being just the two of them because she struggles a bit more. She is happy with the way things are. She doesn't see the need to add more people, but she doesn't communicate this to Olivia. She just goes about trying to kind of sabotage things without letting Olivia know that's what she's doing. And then a new person does indeed join the group, and it definitely makes things a little bit chaotic and kind of forces Jess and Olivia to confront this issue that Olivia doesn't even know is there. I just love this. I love the way the graphic novel portrayed both the story that was going on with Jess and Olivia and the campaign, because one of the fun things I find about this book is here is the campaign. You actually get to see the campaign that they are playing brought to life, and I think that definitely helped me visualize it a little bit more. I love the relationship between Jess and Olivia and how different they are and how they have to figure out how to communicate that. I love the story that was being told through the campaign and how it mirrored some of the stuff that was going on in real life and how that kind of wove in and out of the story and how it all just made so much sense. This is a book where when I got done with that, I almost wanted to start over and read it again. I immediately pre-ordered book 2, and book 2 easily could have been on this list because I loved that one as well. But like I said, only one entry per series, so I went with the one that made me fall in love with the series, which is this first one. And I absolutely would recommend this series if you like D&D, and even if you don't, because I'm not somebody who knows a ton about D&D, I think it is done in a really good way where you don't need to understand D&D to really be able to follow along with what's happening. Like I said, the illustrations really bring everything to life, and I just had such a fun time with this and would highly recommend it. Then I'm going with The Vanderbeekers Ever After, and this is the 7th and final book in the Vanderbeeker series. And in this one, the kids are getting ready to help plan for a wedding when they get some really bad news, and suddenly everything is kind of in flux, and everything that they had thought was going to be happening isn't, because they've kind of had to put everything on pause due to this bad news. This book does such a good job at showing what I truly love about this series, and that is the bond and relationship this family has with each other and with their friends that are kind of part of their greater found family. And this one made me cry. It was extremely emotional, but I felt like it was the perfect way to end the series because, like I said, it does such a good job of really showcasing the strengths of the series, and that is the bond between the siblings, between this family, and between their greater found family. And I just loved every single second of this. I will miss being with these kids and their family so incredibly much, but this feels like the exact right way to end this series. I just had such a good time with this, even though it was a very emotionally hard-hitting book, and I could not imagine not having this on this list because of how perfect an ending to this series it was. Then, a book that I was not expecting to be 5 stars, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So this was the first book that was chosen for my queer book club pick, and I was apprehensive. I had tried to read this. I think I read the first couple of pages way back in 2019. As I believe, if memory serves, it was a buddy read that was happening with Murphy Napier, and I was joining in at the time, and a lot of people were not enjoying it. It was not the kind of book that they enjoyed, so I think I read a couple of pages and then just didn't bother to pick it up and send it back to the library. But I decided to choose it for a queer book club option because I've read other books by Becky Chambers and really enjoyed them and thought, well, maybe if I'm supposed to read it, it will win the poll. And it absolutely did. And I'm so glad it did, because within like 5 pages of starting this, I was like, this feels like it's going to be 5 stars. This has started in a way that just gives me those 5-star feels. And I was reading it on sprints, and I think I never deviated away from that, just going, this is a 5-star read. This is a 5-star read. Unless it does something completely crazy, it's a 5-star read. So this follows the crew of the Wayfarer. And it's a sci-fi book. It's a cozy sci-fi. There's not a lot of plot. There's not a lot of drama. But it follows Rosemary, who is joining this crew. And we get to see her experience these characters for the first time. And we definitely have different like alien species. So there's a very eclectic crew on the ship. And it was super intriguing to see Rosemary get to learn the dynamics between this crew and kind of get to experience that from Rosemary's point of view, because she's new. And all of these other characters already have this bond because they've been traveling together for a while now. And it was just exactly the type of stuff I like in my book. There is, like I said, this bond between this crew, and you see how Rosemary starts to fit into that. And it was really, really cozy. I just loved getting to learn all about this world, getting to see those bonds develop, and going on this little journey with this crew, and just falling in love with the series and the world and the characters. I just had such a fun time with this. It was everything I could have ever wanted it to be and more. I'm not sure I would have appreciated it the way I did in 2024 if I had read it in 2019, but 2024 me, it is exactly the type of book I gravitate towards, and I'm just so grateful that this got put on my radar. I believe I gave books 2 and 4 also 5 stars, and I believe book 3 was like 4.5. So I read this entire series this year. I absolutely adored it, and it all started off with this book and these characters that made me just fall in love with this world. So absolutely adored this, and thank you to everyone who chose to vote for this for June's Queer Book Club pick, because I'm not sure I would have picked it up had I not had that little extra incentive, and it is one of my favorite books of 2024. Next, I'm going to talk about Like a Charm. This is the first book in this series, and it follows Ramya, who has dyspraxia. And dyspraxia is, let me see, she does mention in the author's note, it's more formally known as developmental coordination disorder, and it affects motor skills and processing. This is also on Voices because Elle McNichol says that they were diagnosed at the age of 9. And one of the things I really loved about this book was that Ramya doesn't see why people are so concerned that she has dyspraxia. To her, she doesn't feel like she's broken or less than because of the fact that she's neurodivergent. She thinks that the fact that everybody is trying to force her to do things in ways that don't work for her is just ridiculous. And I love how strong she is. That's not to say it doesn't sometimes get to her, because it very much does. But you definitely see her push back on that idea a lot. And that is one of the things I loved about this book, was what a strong character Ramya was. As for the plot, it starts with Ramya when she was young, and her parents are throwing this party, and a woman is there, and she just gives all of the wrong vibes to Ramya. And her grandfather is at this party, and there ends up being a fight between her grandfather and her parents, and Ramya is definitely involved in this fight, and her parents send her grandfather away, and she never sees him again. Years later, she's at school, and she gets called in the office to be told her grandfather has passed away. He ends up leaving her this journal, and she soon discovers that there is magic in the world, and creatures like vampires are actually real. And she might be one of the few people that has the ability to protect the world from some of the things that are coming in reference to these creatures she didn't know exist and the magic in the world, because she's one of the few people that can actually see them. So she ends up going on this giant adventure due to this journal her grandfather leaves her. And I just love this. I loved having Ramya as our main character. Like I said, she is extremely strong and stubborn and brilliant and amazing. I love seeing the relationships that she gains through this and how they come about, because that is also a huge part of her story. I love getting to learn about the magic in this world and these characters, and seeing what the true story actually is around things like vampires, as opposed to the myths we know. And I just had so much fun with this. It definitely cemented Elle McNichol as an auto by author. I'm currently getting ready to read Like a Curse, the sequel, and I cannot wait. I love the way Elle McNichol writes her books. And like I said, Ramya is an amazing character who is neurodivergent and still this badass. And I just love that there is that representation in a middle grade story. The magic and the universe and the relationships are also fun outside of that. And I just love that even though I don't have dyspraxia, I can still find connections with Ramya and see myself kind of depicted in certain ways and make those connections. And I just love that there are more books like that coming out and that more kids will get exposed to that. So absolutely adored this book. Would highly recommend this and anything else that Elle McNichol has written. So just an amazing book and a 5-star that I read towards the end of the year. And then the fifth and final book that I'm going to mention is Unraveled. This is book 9.5 in the Keeper of the Lost City series. This, I believe, was the very last book I read in 2024, and I ended it on a high note with a 5-star. This is one of my favorite series I've ever read. And in this one, we follow a character who is not Sophie. So if you don't know, Keeper of the Lost Cities follows a young girl named Sophie, who in the first book finds out that the reason she has the ability to read minds is because she's not human. She's an elf, and there's this whole secret world she didn't know about and has to kind of acclimate to that and realizes that there's a reason she was sent to the human world. And this one, I can't tell you much about because, again, 9.5, but Shannon Messenger said that the reason we got this book is because there was a story that needed to be told, and it was not fitting in book 10. And the only way to do that story justice, and because we need this information for book 10 to work, was to write book 9.5, and it had to be from a different character's perspective. And I just loved every single second of this. I had so much fun being in this character's head. I had so much fun seeing what was going on with this character while Sophie was over here doing what Sophie was doing, because this book takes place during book 9. So we're getting to see a different point of view of what was going on in the Keeper world while Sophie was doing what Sophie was doing in book 9. And it was just absolutely fascinating to me. I had such a fun time with this book. I love how engaging this was. I'm very curious as to which bits and pieces of the story were the important bits. So I cannot wait to get to book 10 so I can kind of see how this book and the things that we discover in this book are going to play into that, because I feel like we definitely did learn several things that Sophie doesn't know. So it's going to be really interesting to read book 10 and see how it all kind of comes together. And I love this series. I love this book, and what a way to end 2024. So there you have it. Those were my top 5 books that were part of a series that I read in 2024. I would highly recommend all of them and their series if you haven't checked them out. Like I said, this was really hard because I had a lot of really good books and series, and it was very difficult to narrow down which 5 I was going to talk about. But I think I feel pretty happy with the 5 that I chose. What was your favorite book that you read in a series? Let me know in the comment section below. All of my social media is linked in the description below if you'd like to come chat with me. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me space-themed emojis in honor of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!